Amateur Radio News and Notes for Friday, September 26, 2025. I'm Ed Kabick, November 2 Echo Charlie. In the log this week, the ARRL requests amateurs contact their representatives about the Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act. The NOAA SWFO L1 space weather satellite successfully launched. QRP Labs announces pre-orders for the Morserino M32 Pocket. Equatorial Guinea DXpedition updates have come in from YL2GM. We'll also talk about the MVARC breakfast tomorrow. And also MVARC will be participating in the Masonic Lodges on the Air event tomorrow. Also, we'll check in with MVARC member David Kilo, United 8 Victor, who had some absolutely epic POTA activations. We'll also talk about some MVARC Nets on the Air, see what's happening with DX, get a solar activity update, talk about some upcoming contests, and as always, talk about interesting online radio content. The American Radio Relay League is asking American amateur radio operators to contact their representatives and senators in support of the American Radio Emergency Preparedness Act. The legislation seeks to give amateur radio operators rights equal to the users of antennas for broadcast television, wireless internet, and flagpoles. The bills, H.R. 1094 in the House of Representatives and S. 439 in the Senate, seek to prevent overly restrictive Homeowners Association or HOA regulations that prohibit the installation of antennas, even when placed inconspicuously. The ARRL asks that all amateur radio operators goes to send-a-letter.org/HOA, which will allow for a letter to be sent on your behalf to your representative and senators. More information can be found at links in the show notes. Wednesday morning at 7:32 a.m. Eastern Time, NOAA's Space Weather Follow-On Lagrange 1, or SWFO-L1 satellite, was launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. SWFO-L1's mission is to monitor solar storms from Lagrange Point 1, nearly 1 million miles from Earth. Lagrange points are points where gravitational forces are at equilibrium. Being at this location will allow the satellite to continuously monitor solar wind and energetic particles on their way to Earth. It'll also have a compact coronagraph, or CCOR, capable of imaging coronal mass ejections. This new satellite will ensure continued ability to monitor the sun, as existing satellites at Lagrange Point 1 are already past their design lifetimes. NOAA reported Wednesday that this satellite was already successfully sending telemetry and is on track to reach Lagrange Point 1 in January of 2026 and to begin operations in mid-2026. More information can be found at links in the show notes. Willie OE1WKL and Hans G0UPL announced that the long-awaited update to the Morserino Morse code practice device is now available for pre-order from QRP Labs. The Morserino is an open-source hardware device that acts as a keyer, a trainer, a decoder, and in some instances, a non-conventional transceiver. Previous versions were also available as a kit, and due to the microcontroller platform it used being discontinued, it had become unavailable. The community that maintains the Morserino put in significant work to develop a new version called the M32 Pocket. Available for pre-order now from QRP Labs, it is a fully assembled device and a much more compact form factor than the original. I've built one of the original version and have enjoyed using it to improve my CW skills. It's great to see the new version getting back on the market. For more information about the Morserino M32 Pocket and to pre-order, visit qrplabs.com. Shortly after we went to press last week, there was an update from Eurus, YL2GM, that gave his side of the story for the ill-fated DXpedition to Equatorial Guinea for 3C0W and 3C3W. According to Eurus, there were travel complications getting to Annobon, but they eventually got there. One of the license requirements was that equipment and antennas needed to be inspected by an ORTEL representative before they could go on the air, and the inspector was to fly in for this purpose. While waiting for the inspector, they went to the police station to register and show documents, and they were told that they didn't have an entry permit from the Ministry of Security and were made to leave their luggage at the police station. After a few days with no progress, they decided to return to Malabo and booked a flight for Friday, September 12th, when the authorities said Wednesday that there was a flight that day and they had a hotel arranged for them. Instead, another police unit took them to the police station in Malabo where they were held. The next day, the ORTEL representative arrived with documents, license, and equipment and said that all was in order. Their violation was apparently arriving without the ORTEL representative, and they were not sympathetic to their travel issues. Eventually, they were allowed to leave and do not plan to return. The story from Eurus can be found at a link in the show notes. Another DXpedition to Equatorial Guinea, 3C2MD, announced on September 24, 2025, that they would be postponing their DXpedition due to the continued suspension of amateur radio licenses stemming from the 3C0W DXpedition. More information about that postponement can be found at a link in the show notes. Tomorrow, September 27th, 2025, is the date of our next monthly breakfast. As usual, we will meet up at 8 a.m. at the IHOP at 7694 Richmond Highway in Alexandria, Virginia, for a great conversation, camaraderie, and breakfast too. We have been having a great turnout the last few months, and there's always room for you to join in the fun. We hope to see you there. Tomorrow, following the MVARC breakfast, MVARC will be participating in Masonic Lodges on the Air, or MLOTA, event. MVARC is being hosted once again by the Mount Vernon Lodge, number 219 AF at 8117 Fort Hunt Road in Alexandria, Virginia, 22308. Many of the folks going to the breakfast that morning plan on going directly from there to the Mount Vernon Lodge to set up, and the event itself runs from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We expect to start at 10 and encourage everyone to stop by and join in the fun. Contest rules and frequently asked questions can be found at cqmorelight.com. David, Kilo United 8 Victor, recently took a trip to Delaware to US 1734, that's the Delaware Seashore State Park, and had absolutely stunning results. On Monday, he had limited himself to 20 watts, and he ended up with 116 QSOs with 24 DXCC entities in 23 states and 3 provinces. But then on Tuesday, using his ICOM IC7300 and Chellingant's MC750 antenna and 100 watts, he got 330 contacts with 32 DXCC entities, 34 states, 5 provinces on 5 bands, including the incredibly rare DX of ZD9BV in Tristan da Cunha Island, which is the most remote inhabited place on Earth where there is only one amateur radio operator. David also got Australia, Israel, Poland, Hungary, and a ton of Europe. Congratulations, David. What an absolutely epic activation. And if you have adventures you'd like to share, drop me a line and I may be able to add them to a future amateur radio news and notes. And now it's time to talk about some MVARC Nets on the air. As always, we have our 2-meter FM net on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on the repeater that is immediately followed by the 2-meter digital net using Yaesu System Fusion C4 FM. On the weekends, we've got the MVARC Slow Speed CW Roundtable, both Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 a.m. on 3.565 megahertz CW, where we go about 12 to 15 words a minute, and you're always welcome to join us on that one. And then after that, we got another one with the MVARC Cherry Tree Net on Saturday and Sunday at 8:30 a.m. on 3.920 megahertz lower sideband, where we always have a great conversation, and you are always welcome to join us. Of course, it will not be happening this Saturday because we'll be at breakfast. Hope to talk to you soon. And now it's time to talk about what's happening with DX. There'll be a good amount of DX on the bands this week, including the Federated States of Micronesia, Marcus Island, Minami Torishima Islands, Bhutan, Colombia, Mali, Kuwait, Solomon Islands, and Antarctica. A calendar of DXpeditions can be found at dxnews.com/calendar. And now it's time for a solar activity update. As we go to press, the Solar Flux Index, or SFI, was 170, and the estimated sunspot number was 155, with 10 numbered sunspot regions visible from Earth. Over the last week, the SFI has increased, and solar activity has been at low levels recently. The geomagnetic field is at quiet to unsettled levels, and the KP index reached 3 yesterday. The solar wind peaked at 548 kilometers per second. Solar activity was predicted to be low, with geomagnetic activity at quiet levels today, at quiet to unsettled levels tomorrow, and at quiet to active levels on Sunday. The chance of solar radiation storms at the S1 or greater level is low at 1% through Sunday, R1 to R2 radio blackouts are possible in the near term, with predicted probability of 35% through Sunday. R3 or greater blackouts are unlikely, with a 1% chance predicted today through Sunday. There's a chance of 6-meter propagation, so keep an eye on the band and spotting clusters to be ready with next time the magic band does its thing. And HF conditions have been quite good lately, with the higher bands opening on most days. It remains a fantastic time for amateurs to get on the air and work the world. Good sources of real-time solar information include spaceweatherlive.com and solarham.com. A good overview of conditions can be found at dx.qsl.net/propagation. To see delayer absorption data and associated radio blackouts, go to the NOAA DRAP page. To see real-time maximum usable frequency and critical frequency information from radio SON data, visit prop.kc2g.com. And now let's take a look at some upcoming contests. On the contest calendar this week, we will see the CQ Worldwide DX Contest on Ready, the Bill Windle QSO Party, the YUDX Contest, the Maine QSO Party, the AGCW VHF UHF Contest, Masonic Lodges on the Air, the AWA Amplitude Modulation QSO Party, the UBA ON Contest on 6 meters, and as always, the K1 USN SSTs, MSTs, and CWTs will also be on the air. The full contest calendar with events and exchanges can be found at contestcalendar.com. And now it's time to wrap things up with a little interesting online radio content. Walt K4OGO talks about his favorite antennas using telescoping elements. Hayden VK7HH shows us how to test antennas with a nano VNA. Kevin W1DED and the contest crew talk with Levi K6JO about his performance in the Worked All Europe contest. Matt M0DQW takes a look at the Redtel RT950 Pro. Mike K8MRD activates a Rove with Sean W9FFF and Aaron AE0LZ. Hayden VK7HH uses a nano VNA to test coaxial cable. Kevin W1DED talks to Kylie KE0WPA about her growth in the hobby. Mike K8MRD tells us his 10 favorite features of the Yaesu FTX-1F. Steve KM9G repairs a Yaesu FT8800. Mike K8MRD goes car camping and activates POTA in Arkansas. Josh KI6NAZ talks about whether amateur radio is, quote, pay to win. Forrest KI7QCF talks about his CW10 essentials. They are quite bling. Also, we've got Tim K50HY building and testing a half-square antenna, and this must be the week for it because Walt K4OGO also built and tests a half-square antenna. Very interesting results from both of them. George VK2AOE freshens up his Yaesu FT101E. Kevin W1DED is interviewed by his wife about his re-entry into amateur radio. Sean W9FFF builds a Hermes Light 2 SDR, which is one of my favorite radios. Always a fun one to get on the air with. Kevin KB9RLW builds an off-grid laptop power supply with low RFI. Evan K2EJT gives us his thoughts on the new Xiegu CW keys. And finally, Vince VE6LK asks Eric WD8RIF what he'd tell his younger self about amateur radio. Well, that is it for this week. I have been Ed, November 2 Echo Charlie. Thanks, as always, for joining us. Hope you have a great week ahead. Best 73, and we'll see you again next week.